Welcome back to The Last Word with me, Justice Malala. My guest tonight is One SA movement leader, Mmusi Maimane. Mmusi Maimane, the key question people are asking, they say, you are a strong leader in parliament and so on. Why aren't you standing in these elections?
Yeah, because we're building a national project, so it would have been near impossible for me just to focus on just one word. Because you'll remember, all these associations we've put across in every province. We've got representation elsewhere. And I've committed myself to building One South Africa movement as a grassroots movement. The second thing is that this is not something that's going to finish on the 1st of November. We want by next year the law around electoral reform to be which we've tabled in Parliament to be passed, so that it's not just independents to stand in Parliament, but we have to break the power of these big parties. And then come 2024, you will see Mmusi Maimane campaigning with a whole lot of candidates across the country for the purpose of Parliament, so that we can bring reform there. Because ultimately, we recognize that whilst the problems might be at local government for these elections, but there will be national elections at which we need to bring direct constituency-based election and bring about the change nationally.
So you're running for president?
2024 will be going strong, not because of any other thing, but I think this country can do with change that is led by citizens. Not led politically, led by the people of this country.
So what will Monday say to you about that effort towards 2024?
Yeah. It is already saying a number of things. It's saying to me, just by virtue of your intro, the increase in the number of independent candidates tell me there's a deep appetite for a new vehicle, a new, So that's already the first thing. The second thing is, I think that we're going to test out the confidence that people can express in independence. Thirdly, we are also modeling whether or not people realize their own rights, because the right to vote for someone directly is a right that's yours. You've got to use it to the best. So that's what Monday will tell us. And then lastly, I think there are a few municipalities I'll be watching with great interest, where we've ran big campaigns because they desperately are in need for change. In others, you might have a few independents coming on board, but we're confident in a few municipalities that I think will be able to bring the significant change that we need.
How about money? The ANC's broke, it can't pay its own people. The DA seems to have billions, and it's declared some of those. What about your movement and your candidates?
This is the genius about the model, really, because actually, for the ANC to run a campaign, they need a few billion, and so does the DA. For us, we can get back to communities because it's very localized. You are backing a candidate, Ms. Mang Mang, in this community, and it can work with localized communities.
But it still needs money.
Of course,
needs funding.
Recognizing the inequalities of our country, we can look at one municipality and say, are you able to raise more money so as to help someone else elsewhere? So the quantum of money becomes a fraction of what the big political parties need. And furthermore, we've been able to say to donors, to South Africans, to say, if you believe in direct democracy, make a contribution. So citizens in business have done so. Ordinary people that are just making a few contributions of 100 rands, 200 rands there, have done so. And I'm confident that as we've raised money from the ground up, it is truly authentically something that comes from the community and by the people.
And obviously you'll be declaring this to the relevant bodies.
Absolutely, and we'd put it on our website because we're not the law. There is no sort of law that compels us to be able to then directly put it to the IEC in that sense. But each candidate, as they go, the IEC must give us the prescriptions as to how it can do that. I'm open to declarations because it will prove the point that democracy cannot be expensive so as to the exclusion of ordinary South Africans.
Racial issues, as you alluded to right at the beginning, have played a huge role in these elections and in previous elections. In these elections, the Phoenix Matter, the Encounter, one of the One SA movement people had on a podcast with the leader of the DA. How important is race in these elections?
Race will always be important in our country, given our history, given where we've come from, and given that we are into our third decade as a democracy. Race is going to matter. I think that the difficulty that we've had now is that South Africa has harked back to '94. The political parties really reflect the infrastructure that was in place in the early '94s, if you like. You've still got fundamentally black parties versus white parties in the big infrastructure. So now what we've got to do is say to ourselves, who is leading that one SA, that sense of let's bring all citizens together, because that voice is missing, and that's the voice that reflects the majority of people in this country. Because then the next issue is about how do we allow race to intersect with the very fundamental issues. So we're dealing with an apartheid spatial network as an example. When I speak about an experience of what a black woman goes through, no one can deny the fact that the ANC government says for every 4 shacks, there must be 1 toilet. Which means there is a woman who's waking up in the middle of the night right now, today, going to the toilet in the dark without electricity. So race, in that sense, matters as it intersects with issues of governance and how do we ensure that there isn't systematic exclusion of citizens. So undeniably, if we do not deal with building a movement of South Africans who can speak on the same breath, because it's not just black people who must fight against racism, it must be white people, it must be citizens who abhor racism, must work together. We must then deal with the governance questions that say we systematically dismantle the apartheid spatial network that keeps people in their racial corners. And I think the opportunity for that will always be here in our country, and we must keep fighting hard against it.
You've almost, without saying it, said the DA is essentially a party of white interest.
Certainly. I think that's one of the reasons I left. It's one of the reasons I realized that it could not tell. When I was fighting hard to say, let's build a diverse organization, when I was fighting hard then we say, let's build a South Africa that works for all the people, there are some who've come back on and said, look, because we lost some voters to the Freedom Front Plus, let's go and pursue those voters, which in essence is a consolidation of minoritism. And ultimately, that is not, in my view, a party that is pursuing a vision for all South Africans. That's why there isn't a message that talks to about how do we deal with injustices. That's why there's this almost kind of underlying color blindness that's just emerged.
The DA mayoral candidate, Dr. Palazzo, said, for example, tonight, earlier on this station, said it's an insult to her to say she's a token that the DA is a racist party. That harkens to all those issues you've raised.
I think that the vision of the national leadership of the DA at the moment is not a vision that reflects all of South Africa. And I think it's up to the members of the DA currently, regardless of whether to defend or to demonstrate how that works. But the reason I couldn't stay in that, and as Mmusi Maimane, I felt I needed to go elsewhere to build one South Africa, is precisely because eventually when you start fighting, and there's another vision that counters that, you have to give it expression elsewhere. And that's the job I'm doing now.
Mmusi Maimane, it's been lovely to talk to you, but I want to ask you one question before you leave. If in 2024, if the signals are right for you on Monday and independent candidates do well, what would you say to the people of South Africa is your unique selling point? Many people would say, oh, you know, you jumped from the DA, you said all these things, you're just a politician, and you just want a new soapbox to stand on. What would be your stance for that run in 2024?
I think that run in 2024 will be reduced to the fact that Mmusi Maimane recognizes that the first problem about South Africa is that we've got too many South Africas. And therefore, I believe that at this point in time, I know no one else who's fighting to say, let's break down those South Africas to build one. One that prospers together regardless of race. And secondly, let's address not only the economics of this country, but the education of this country. There isn't a leader who's talking forthrightly about asking our kids to pass better, asking our kids to be better for themselves in terms of the skills base of this country. And you can be assured, come 2024, our message will be South Africa ultimately can do better than what it's doing right now. And that's what my big campaign and drive is right now. And ultimately, power should always reside with the citizens. I'm done with these politicians who are earning money, doing well, whereas the citizens are struggling. So that's what I'm working towards. And I know it sounds it, but when I left the DA out of principle, I was literally leaving out of a place of no income, nothing, because I realized that the principle was stronger than any income or anything I could ever work towards.
Mmusi Maimane, good luck with that.
Much appreciated.
Join us after the break for our comment of the day.